So, Section 8, this is where things get interesting. This section deals with punishments, and no, we're not talking about being sent to your room without dessert. We're talking serious penalties here, the kind that could land you behind bars for a significant chunk of your life. The specifics vary depending on the severity of the crime, but let's just say it's not something you want on your CV. Think of it like this: if the Pakistani legal system were a restaurant, Section 8 would be the menu section titled Consequences of Your Actions, and trust me, you don't want to accidentally order the wrong thing from this menu. This section gives authorities the power to enter and search premises. Now, before you start imagining black-clad ninjas rappelling through your windows at 3 a.m., let's be clear, this isn't a free-for-all. There are rules, procedures, and legal hoops to jump through. This isn't your friend popping over unannounced because they're in the neighborhood. This is more like having a very official, very serious guest who happens to be wearing a badge and carrying a warrant. It's not ideal, but it's a necessary part of investigating potential threats. This section deals with the forfeiture of property, basically. If the authorities believe that your sweet new ride or that beachfront villa was purchased with ill-gotten gains from, say, terrorism-related activities, they can seize it. It's like that moment in a movie when the police raid a gangster's mansion and start hauling out bags of cash and expensive paintings, except in this case, it's not just about the bling, it's about cutting off funding sources for terrorism. This section is all about organizations involved in terrorism. We're not talking about your local book club that gets a little rowdy during their monthly meetings of Pride and Prejudice. We're talking about groups actively engaged in planning, facilitating, or carrying out acts of terror. This is where things get a bit more complex. How do you define a terrorist organization? Who gets to decide? These are all important questions, and ones that the Act attempts to address. This section outlines the process of banning organizations involved in terrorism. Think of it like being permanently kicked out of the international club of decent human beings. It's not a good look, and it comes with some serious consequences. Of course, banning an organization isn't as simple as telling them to go stand in the corner and think about what they've done. There's a whole legal process involved with checks and balances to prevent abuse. This section is all about the right to review, which is a fundamental principle of justice. Basically, if you're accused of something under this Act, you have the right to challenge that accusation. Think of it as the legal equivalent of asking for a second opinion. You're not saying the first doctor is incompetent, necessarily, but it's always good to get a second set of eyes on the situation, just to be sure. This section establishes a committee specifically tasked with reviewing proscriptions. This committee acts as a safeguard against the potential misuse of the Act. They're like the referees of the legal system, making sure everyone's playing by the rules. Because, let's face it, even with the best intentions, laws can be misinterpreted or misused. That's where this committee comes in, providing an extra layer of scrutiny and accountability. This section allows authorities to place individuals or organizations under observation. Now, before you start picturing shadowy figures following you around with binoculars and notepads, let's be clear, this isn't about turning Pakistan into a surveillance state. This is about monitoring potential threats, not about spying on ordinary citizens. It's a delicate balance, and one that requires careful consideration. This section details the actions that can be taken against banned organizations. It's not just about putting a group on a list and calling it a day. There are real, tangible consequences for being designated as a terrorist organization. These measures can range from financial restrictions to travel bans, and they're all designed to disrupt and dismantle terrorist networks. This section outlines the process for banning individuals involved in terrorism. This is the part where we talk about putting individuals on lists, but not the kind you get on your birthday, the kind that can significantly impact your life. It's a serious step not to be taken lightly, and it's subject to the same rigorous legal processes as the proscription of organizations.